Like many things in 2020, this ceremony is a little later than planned. The pandemic has hit us all in one way or another, and global politics continues to prove a constant source of additional stress. But the year wasn't a complete disaster. The fields of science fiction, fantasy and horror continue to entertain us, and the last few years have brought about a renewed interest in our genres. Today we're here to honour the creators of some of the works that were produced, broadcast and published in 2019. My name is Lee Harris, and welcome to the belated British Fantasy Awards 2020. Before we kick off, there are a few people to thank. First of all, thanks to everyone who voted and nominated in the awards. Thanks to Kat Fowler, who administered the awards, and Morag Hickman, who designed the trophies. Thanks to our guest presenters, who you will see pop up during this ceremony. And thanks to the awards jurors who debated the finalists and decided on the winners. We have quite a few awards to present, so let's get straight to it. First up is the Sidney J. Bands Award for Best Newcomer. And here to present it is last year's winner, author of the Burning Kingdoms trilogy, Tasha Shuri.
Hello, it's a privilege to be here to present the Sidney J. Bands Award for Best Newcomer. We're really lucky to be in a field and a genre that is full of cutting-edge talent, new and established. And I think you'll agree that this shortlist reflects some of the best of us who will shape the future of SFF for many, many years to come. So without further ado, the nominees are Penny Jones for Suffer Little Children, Nina Orem for The Joining, Ta-Nehisi Coates for The Water Dancer, Alex E. Harrow for The 10,000 Doors of January, Tamsin Muir for Gideon the Ninth. And the winner of the Sidney J. Bands Award for Best Newcomer is Ta-Nehisi Coates for The Water Dancer.
We're living in a new golden age of television and film, and this is suitably reflected in the shortlist for the British Fantasy Award for Best TV or Film Production. And the nominees are Game of Thrones: The Long Night, written by Gursimran Sandhu and Ethan J. Annucci, adapted by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss from the novels by George R.R. Martin, directed by Miguel Sapochnik. Us, written and directed by Jordan Peele. Watchmen: It's Summer and We're Running Out of Ice, written by Damon Lindelof, based on the graphic novel co-created by Dave Gibbons, directed by Nicole Castle. The Witcher: Rare Species, created for television by Lauren Schmidt, written by Hayley Hall, based on the Witcher series of novels by Andrzej Sapkowski and directed by Charlotte Brandstrom. And the winner is Us, written and directed by Jordan Peele. Our genres have a long and distinguished history of criticism and scrutiny. Every year, millions of words are written about every aspect of science fiction, fantasy and horror, from book-specific critical analysis through to the examination of the subcultures that develop around the field. The nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Non-Fiction are Joanna Russ by Gwyneth Jones for the University of Illinois Press. The Pleasant Profession of Robert A. Heinlein by Farah Mendelssohn, Unbound. Notes from the Borderland by Linda E. Rucker, Black Static. The Full Lid by Alastair Stewart. The Dark Fantastic, Race and the Imagination from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas for the New York University Press. Coffin Maker's Blues, Collected Writings on Terror by Stephen Volk, PS Publishing. And the winner is The Dark Fantastic, Race and the Imagination from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas.
Hello from Philadelphia. I am extremely honored to be the recipient of the 2020 British Fantasy Award for Best Nonfiction. Not only am I earnestly grateful for this recognition, I am humbled, reflective, and quite frankly surprised. The Dark Fantastic was in such incredible company, and I want to acknowledge all the brilliant authors nominated this year. I'd like to thank everyone at New York University Press, Post-Millennial Pop series editors Henry Jenkins and Karen Thompson, editor-in-chief Eric Zinner, and their entire incredible team. I have been so fortunate to have the extraordinary artwork of Paul Lewin grace my cover. The Tree Spirits is straight from the fantastic dreams of my childhood. So many scholars of children's and young adult literature inspired, encouraged, and nurtured the Dark Fantastic, both in word and deed. You all know who you are. I am so appreciative of you. I've been thrilled by the way the book has been received by the science fiction and fantasy world, as well as among ACOFAN communities far beyond my fields of English education and reading research. Penn GSE deserves credit for the wonderful way they support junior faculty and nurture our careers. Sending so much love to my family, especially my mother and my sisters. My hope lies in a future that I won't get to see, but that my 6 nibblings will. May the children of tomorrow rest well beneath the shade of the trees we are planting today. Thank you.
And here to present the British Fantasy Award for Best Artist is writer and World Fantasy Award-winning artist Kathleen Jennings.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Jennings and I have the great honour of presenting the British Fantasy Award for Best Artist. Fantasy artists shape and illuminate so much of this genre, from first impressions to deep secrets, and this year's nominees are all experts in evoking the beautiful, the marvellous and the strange. So this year's nominees for British Fantasy Award for Best Artist are Ben Baldwin, David Ricks, Jackie Morris, Vince Haig. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Artist is Ben Baldwin.
To present the award for Best Comic or Graphic Novel, I'm delighted to hand over to the writer of numerous comics, including Orphan Black for IDW, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy for DC, Star Wars Rogue One for Marvel, and Doctor Who for Titan. Please welcome Jodie Hauser.
Those of us who work in comics often have to remind the world at large that comic books are a medium, not a genre. But even though you can tell really any kind of story in comics form, the scope of just what you can accomplish in the medium makes it the perfect vehicle for speculative fiction. I mean, after all, the only limits are the space on the page or screen and the imagination and skill of the writers, artists, colorists, letterers, and editors involved. This year's nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Comic or Graphic Novel show us just how powerful the great sequential storytelling can be. And the nominees are Mike Mignola's BPRD, The Devil You Know Volume 3, Ragnarok. Art by Lawrence Campbell, colored by Dave Stewart, Dark Horse Comics. Basketful of Heads, written by Joe Hill, art by Leo Max, DC Comics. Deceased 1 through 6, written by Tom Taylor, art by Laura Braga, Neil Edwards, Trevor Hairsine, James Harnan, Derek Robertson, DC Comics. The Ozone Diary, by Pentti Otsamo and Tero Mielonen, Luna Press Publishing. 2000 AD, edited by Matt Smith, Rebellion Publishing. Die, written by Kieran Gillen, art by Stephanie Hans, Image Comics. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Comic or Graphic Novel is Die, written by Kieran Gillen, art by Stephanie Hans, Image Comics.
Thank you so much. Honestly, this is an enormous honor. Like with Die, there's this. We wanted to do this fantasy comic that was really deeply embedded in like the sort of the British fantasy world I brought up in, and this kind of love song and analysis to fantasy in all its forms. So to be recognised by you is like a hell of a thing. So thank you so much. We feel very seen.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is such a great honor to be recognized for a award that is purely labor of love. This is my first award, so I'm super excited. Thank you.
We have to say some quick thanks. Thanks to Clayton, who wrestles with my overwritten captions. So thanks a lot, Clayton. Like we have Ryan, who's given the entire book this really crisp modernist look. We have Chrissy, who's the editor and an absolute fundamental part of the book. It would not exist without of her. And everyone at Image, our publisher, and of course our readers and everyone who's played the game, and also, of course, all of you who voted for this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody who bought the book once and came back to the retailer to buy a second one for all their friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Jodie, and congratulations to the winners. Next, please welcome novelist Stuart Hodgson, who will walk us through the nominees for Best Magazine or Periodical.
Hello everybody. In this year that's been so difficult for so many of us, it's also been a challenge to find content, to find reviews, to find new writers, to find new producers of creativity and stories and reviews. Into this we owe so much to people who write magazines, who write reviews, who create periodicals for us, because they are our journeys to discovery. They are the people who so often champion new creators. So I have the pleasure of presenting to you the nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Magazine or Periodical. And they are, in no particular order, Ginger Nuts of Horror, Black Static, Shoreline of Infinity, The Dark, S and SF, and last but not least, Fire. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Magazine or Periodical is Fire.
Hello, I'm Troy Wiggins, publisher of Fire Literary Magazine of Black Speculative Fiction. Fire magazine was created to reflect the lived experiences of Black writers in the world of speculative fiction. Accepting the British Fantasy Award from the British Fantasy Society is an honor that shows that we are succeeding in that mission. This award represents a whole host of Black creatives, our team, our authors, our cover artists, and the people who support Fire's mission by reading and subscribing to our magazine and submitting their work to us. Thank you to the British Fantasy Society Awards Committee and to everyone who voted to make this award happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Next up, Charlotte Bond and the nominees for Best Independent Press.
Independent presses are so important for the speculative fiction scene. They're the publishers who take the risks on new, innovative, and interesting fiction that we might not get to read if we only read the commercial publications. And the nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Independent Press are Black Shuck Books, Luna Publishing, Newcom Press, Undertow Publications, Rebellion Publishing, and Aqueduct Press. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Independent Press is Rebellion Publishing.
On behalf of Jason and Chris Kingsley, my bosses, our tireless publicists and inspired designers, my fearless fellow editors, and everyone at Rebellion Publishing Limited, I'd like to thank the members of the British Fantasy Society and the British Fantasy Award jury for this incredible honour. 2019 was a great year for Solaris, Abaddon Books, 2000 AD and Rebellion. We launched some wonderful debuts and published favourite old hands and brought beloved icons like Sexton Blake and Roy the Rovers to new audiences. It's a cliche to say that we couldn't do this without our creators, but it's absolutely true. From Sue Davies, Ockenboa's Nomo Award-winning David Mogo Godhunter, to Mary Robinette Cole's Hugo Award-winning The Calculating Stars, to Nisi Shaw's amazing Locus, Ignite, Starburst and World Fantasy Award-winning New Suns, we're only as good a publisher as our exceptional creators make us. It was our first full year without Jonathan Oliver, who commissioned several of the books before he left. Our editorial team has incredible new talent in Michael, Kate and Jim, and we're going from strength to strength, but his voice and vision will be missed. I'm sure he's as thrilled as we are. It was a more ambitious, more exciting, more fiercely competitive year for us and for our fellow publishers than I've yet seen in my time in this industry, and my colleagues and I are delighted to be part of it. 2020 has brought challenges of its own, of course, but we're still going strong, and I'll save that for next year's acceptance speech. Thank you again, and here's to another great year in genre.
It feels like every 6 months someone from outside the media creates an audio-only production, only for the mainstream press to declare it interesting and new. Well, audio is certainly interesting, but new it ain't. Some of the best work in SFF&H in both fiction and non-fiction is happening in audio. And our nominees represent both camps. And the nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Audio are Breaking the Glass Slipper, presented by Megan Lee, Charlotte Bond and Lucy Hanson. Podcastle, hosted by Setsu Uzume, edited by Jen R. Albert and Sheree Clark, and the team, which includes Aidan Doyle, Devin Martin, Eleanor Wood, Amelia Harrington, Hamilton Perez, Julia Patt, Julian K. Jarbo, Kai Hudson, Caitlin Zavanovich, Shamari Kirkwood, Sophia Barker, Sri Kripa Krishna Prasad, Tierney Bailey, Ziv Witties, Craig Jackson, Eleanor Wood, Matt Dovey, Graham Dunlop, and audio producer Peter Verevesh. Pseudopod, hosted by Alistair Stewart, with editors Alex Hofelik and Sean Garrett, and the team, which includes Karen Bovenmeyer, Carson Ash Baker, Steph P. Bianchini, Shauna Borman, Ted Callin, Kat Day, Graham Dunlop, Jack Evans, Jamie Grimes, Adrian Howard, Austin Malone, T.M. Morgan, S.K. Nash, Christy Nogle, Kitty Sarkozy, M.M. Shell, Joshua Tuttle, Victoria Winnick, Jessica Ann York, Brian Lieberman, and audio producers Chelsea Davis and Marty Perrett. Speculative Spaces, created and hosted by Beth Falls. And the winner is Podcastle.
Audio fiction is a connection, a writer, a speaker, a listener, component parts of a necessary spell. It's the magic of a voice in our ear, the familiar catch in our hearts as the tale unfolds. This year, these connections are even more important, life-saving even. Despite the difficulties, we've been glad to be able to bring some magic to the world.
We'd like to thank the British Fantasy Society for considering us for this award and recognizing the contribution of artists everywhere this year, and this year's jury for believing in us. We're so honored to be counted among the nominees in this category: Speculative Spaces, Breaking the Glass Slipper podcast, and our sister podcast, Pseudopod. All of you produce incredible work and deserve every accolade.
We have a huge and incredible team that works to make our show possible. Thanks to our current and former first readers who make submissions manageable, working hard to find us the best possible content, including Crystal Claxton, Matt Dovey, Aidan Doyle, Ebony Dunbar, Amelia Harrington, Kai Hudson, Ekpeki Ogenichowe, Devin Martin, Catherine McMahon, Ace Ratcliffe, Julian Jarbo, Craig Jackson, Julia Patt, Hamilton Perez, Eleanor Wood, Tierney Bailey, Sophia Barker, Shamari Kirkwood, Sri Kripa Krishna Prasad, Ziv Witties, and Caitlin Zavanovich.
To Alistair Stewart and Marguerite Kenner, the best bosses a podcaster could ask for. Thanks for keeping us organized, ambitious, and highly entertained.
And thanks to Podcastle's tireless audio producer, our one true hero, Peter Verevesh.
And we are eternally grateful to Setsu Uzume, our assistant editor and host, and the star of our show. You both are amazing.
And to the authors, narrators, staff, and listeners who bring their songs to the castle, thank you. None of this would be possible without you.
And to Sheree Clark,
and to Jen Albert.
Amazing.
Snazzy.
Epic. Inimitable.
Grammatical.
Golden.
All around good
Great
people.
job, everyone.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthologies are a great resource for readers to discover new voices and also to delight in familiar voices, often in the same volume. The nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Anthology are A Secret Guide to Fighting Elder Gods, edited by Jennifer Prozek for Pulse. Once Upon a Parsec, the Book of Alien Fairy Tales, edited by David Gullen for Newcon Press. Wonderland, edited by Maria O'Regan and Paul Kane for Titan. New Suns, original speculative fiction for people of colour, edited by Nisi Shawl for Solaris. The Woods, edited by Phil Sloman for Hersham Horror. The Big Book of Classic Fantasy, edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer for Vintage. And the winner is... New Suns, original speculative fiction for people of colour, edited by Nisi Shawl for Solaris. Nisi Shawl sent us these words to read out. My name is Nisi Shawl, and I'm the editor of New Suns, original speculative fiction by people of colour. Thank you so much for your amazing award. This anthology was truly a collective effort, from the work of our mighty publisher, through the contributions of our inspired and awesome contributing authors, and beyond. The cover art, the distribution, the advertising, it was all powerful, all significant, and all crucial to bringing us to this moment. We're happy to be able to share the glory of New Suns with you, and glad and proud that you understand its genre-redefining brilliance. Once again, thank you. Now please welcome multi-award-winning author Aliette de Bodard to present the British Fantasy Award for Best Short Fiction.
And here are the nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Short Story. Tomorrow When I Was Young by Julie Travis, published by Avonvale Press. Dendrochronology by Penny Jones, From the Woods, published by Hersham Horror Books. I Say, by Robert Shearman, from Tales from the Shadow Booth, Volume 3, published by The Shadow Booth. The Bane Eater's Daughter, by Laura Mauro, from Sing Your Sadness Deep, published by Undertow Publication. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for short story is The Pain Eater's Daughter by Laura Mauro, from Sing Your Sadness Deep, published by Undertow Publication.
Laura sent us some words to read out. I'm not very good at writing speeches, so I'll keep this short and sweet. Thank you to everyone who supported me and believed in me and my stories. I miss you all and love you lots. This one is for anyone who's ever felt a bit of an outsider, a little bit monstrous. I hope you know you are not alone. Next up, we have the British Fantasy Award for Best Collection. And to introduce our nominees, multi-award-winning author Paul Cornell.
And here are the nominees for the British Fantasy Award for Best Collection. The nominees are The Boughs Withered When I Told Them My Dreams by Maura McHugh, published by Newcon Press. Growing Things and Other Stories by Paul Tremblay, published by Titan Books. Sing Your Sadness Deep by Laura Moreau, published by Undertow Publications. This House of Wounds by Georgina Bruce, published by Undertow Publications. Of Wars and Memories and Starlight by Aliette de Bodard, published by Subterranean Press. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Collection is Sing Your Sadness Deep by Laura Moreau.
Laura sent us some words to read out, but she only sent us one speech, so here is the full version of the speech that was read out earlier. I'm not very good at writing speeches, so I'll keep this short and sweet. Thank you to everyone who has supported me and believed in me and my stories. I miss you all and love you lots. And thanks especially to Mike and Carolyn Kelly at Undertow, who took a chance on this collection and made it beautiful. This one is for anyone who's ever felt a little bit of an outsider, a little bit monstrous. I hope you know you are not alone. And now I'd like to hand over to the President of the British Fantasy Society, Alan Ashley, who will tell you all about this year's recipient of the Carl Edward Wagner Award.
Hello, I'm Alan Ashley. I'm President of the British Fantasy Society, and I'm presenting the Carl Edward Wagner Award. This is an award where the nominations come in from the BFS membership and the final decision is made by the BFS committee. What's important about this award is it's not necessarily for something achieved during the preceding year. This is an award that's sort of quite wide, and we can look at someone who's had a length of service, someone who's achieved something special that maybe hasn't been noticed. As we're all volunteers, a lot goes on behind the scenes that people don't necessarily notice. So So that's what the Carl Edward Wagner Award is all about. So the person we have chosen to win the award this year is someone who has given a long service to the BFS, 29 years, in fact, by our calculations, as reviews editor, 20 of those as independent press reviews editor, which is just fantastic. We really appreciate everything he's done. So I'm pleased to say that the winner of the Carl Edward Wagner Award for 2020 is Craig Lockley. Well done, Craig, and big thanks from all the committee and the membership. Cheers. Nice one.
Former FantasyCon guest of honour Claire North is here to present the British Fantasy Award for Best Novella.
Novellas are one of the most awesome literary forms ever. Technically speaking, they're supposed to have been invented in a time of plague, but ignoring that, they've also given us Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Animal Farm, The Old Man and the Sea. Basically, novellas rock. And it is my absolute privilege and pleasure to introduce this year's nominees for the Novella Award. The nominees are Orm Shadow by Priya Sharma from Tor.com Publishing, Ragged Alice by Gareth L. Powell from Tor.com Publishing, The Survival of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson, Tor.com Publishing, The Butcher's Table from Wounds by Nathan Ballingrud from Saga Press, The Deep by Rivers Solomon with David Diggs, William Hudson and Jonathan Snipes from Saga Press and Hodder and Stoughton, The Ascent to Godhood by Neon Yang from Tor.com Publishing. And the winner of the British Fantasy Award for Best Novella is Orm Shadow by Priya Sharma from Tor.com Publishing.
And now on to the Robert Holstock Award for Best Fantasy Novel. Fantasy literature comes in many forms: epic, urban, rural, modern, dark, portal and more, and you'll find a great selection of those here. The nominees are The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker for Orbit, The 10,000 Doors of January, Alex E. Harrow for Orbit, The Migration by Helen Marshall for Titan, The Poison Song by Jen Williams for Headline. And the winner of the Robert Holstock Award for Best Fantasy Novel is The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker for Orbit. R.J. sent through these words to be read out. I have tried and failed to record a speech about 5 times so far, and to be quite frank, got nowhere with it. I mean, as I sit here today, I'm in the past and I haven't won anything, and I've actually never won anything, so it's unlikely I will. But I have to talk about it as if I had, even though I don't know if I have. This is exactly why I don't like media about time travel. It just messes with my head. So I'm writing a thing to be read out instead. Which also means I don't have to do my hair. And then there's also the fact I'm quite lazy. And any award ceremony feels like you should use it to say something important, and that requires a lot of thinking, which is generally something I'm against, thinking. I mean, chronic illness puts a limit on exactly how much time you have to do anything. So I kind of habitually become a person who spends their time on what is and puts off what could be until it's inevitable. So if this seems kind of slack, blame crushing tiredness and strong painkillers. Not only, but also, can we really judge art? It's a thing I've always struggled with the idea of. To say this is better than that when so much of it is subjective feels like a strange thing and always leaves me feeling like there must be a better way. Because I know, as you should, and every writer out there does, that between the books on the shortlist and the books not on the shortlist is the tiniest gap. Another year, another time, it could and probably would be entirely different. The same with the winner. What an awful word to apply to this. It's not a race. Writing is for me, and I hope for everyone else involved, an exercise in joy and most definitely not a competition. A tiny amount separates it from the other books on the shortlist, and almost nothing. It is not about being better, maybe it is simply about being of the moment, and that is what I happen to be at this singular point of time. The thing that was of the moment, no better or worse, only the now. However. But maybe it's not really a competition, and maybe winner is just the best word we have at the moment. Maybe this is really about celebration, and it's an excuse to be virtually together and celebrate a thing we love and say, look at this thing we love, come and party with us. And talk with us about the things we love and disagree with us or agree with us and enjoy the fact that it's there and we are also here to do this. And right now that's a far more important thing than any award, and it's something we all need. Coming together is important. Maybe this year of being forced apart will help us realise that we need each other, and that sense of community is far more important than the things that separate us. We write the fiction of the fantastic and the disparate. We actually actively search out books that will give us new experiences. The Bone Ships is a book about acceptance and how, when people are given a chance, they will often as not choose the right and most humane thing to do. That message of acceptance is in so much fiction right now, and it brings me a huge amount of joy. So yes, use this as an excuse to celebrate. People are often surprising and wonderful given the chance. Orbit gave my little pet project about boats, and using far more words than I needed to, because it feels right, a chance, and here we are now. There are myriad rewards in letting people do whatever it is they need to do to be happy, so be happy and let other people be happy. Thank you. Is it even an award ceremony without an effusive list of thanks? Of course not, so here we go. The Bone Ships would not be the Bone Ships without the input of my editor, Jenny Hill, who has an excellent eye for when I am slacking off and when I have missed something that just may make the book a little, maybe even a lot, better. The author-editor relationship is one of trust, and it is wonderful to work with someone I trust so much and who is so brilliant at what they do. There's also Nazia and Angela, who get the books out there and make sure you hear about them and clearly get that done. And Nivea, my US editor, who is also top. In fact, everyone at Orbit, they're just lovely people to write with. And a big shout out to Jude Owusu, who did such a brilliant job narrating the audiobook. I would not be here without my agent, Ed Wilson of Johnson & Alcock, who does all the stuff I would find stressful to do and removes that from my life so I can just write. And he makes me laugh even when writing sends me a bit dotty and he has to put up with my nonsense. Together, Orbit and Ed have changed my life and I'm hugely grateful to them for it. My family, of course, who I just couldn't do this without. Or in the case of my son, who is at home right now, maybe I could get a bit more done if he was back at school, but I would miss him terribly, so I'll just have to get by. There's a whole host of authors and book reviewers who I talk to and read, and every day they make my life a little better just by being about, so thanks for that, you know who you are. And readers, the reason for it all. I've often said that I dislike the word fan. It feels far more comfortable for me to think of you all as new friends. I mean, we clearly like a lot of the same things, and the idea I have thousands of friends all around the world just delights me. So thank you all so very much for coming aboard the Tide Child with Joran, Meers and Guillaume. Lastly, I'm still not sure how I feel about awards, and if you're hearing this, very sadly, it means my comedy Twitter bio has been absolutely ruined. But you're not getting the award back, it's mine, and you'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. Lee, if you are reading this out, please growl like a tiger, protecting its award. Thank you so very much for this. You are all brilliant. So go out there and be brilliant. Actually don't. Stay in and be brilliant, unless you're going out there to be brilliant in the daily allowed exercise you can do under lockdown. But be brilliant wherever you are. I'm sure you will be. Thank you. Our final award is the August Derleth Award for Best Horror Novel. Some of the best novels of recent years cause their readers to experience a sense of fear, dread or repulsion, and 6 of the best form our next shortlist. The nominees are The Plague Stones by James Brogden for Titan, The Institute by Stephen King, Hodder and Stoughton, The Twisted Ones, T. Kingfisher for Titan, Mistletoe by Alison Littlewood for Joe Fletcher Books, The Migration by Helen Marshall for Titan, The Reddening by Adam Neville for Ritual Limited. And the winner of the August Derleth Award for Best Horror Novel is The Reddening by Adam Neville for Ritual Limited.
Take 54 and action. Only kidding. This is my second attempt. I'm coming at you off the cuff from my lair down in South Devon. So this is a bit of found footage. Currently being ravaged by a huge sea storm, which makes me think that the prehistoric rite I performed on the beach the other day probably wasn't a good idea. And I also don't have a tuxedo, so apologies for that. But I just wanted to give a huge thank you and a huge salute to the BFS and to the jury and to the members who voted the Reddening onto the shortlist and all of the readers who have been so kind and so appreciative about the Reddening. And, you know, this book differs from my others It was published through my own imprint. I pretty much went fully indie in 2017, and I assumed I would leave all the traditional mechanisms of publishing behind, from bookshops and foreign rights and awarding bodies, but that hasn't been the case. So it is wonderful and heartwarming to have a Ritual Limited novel recognised by the BFS and by the August Derleth. The BFS, an organisation I've had a long association with, and I'm very proud to be part of the BFS family. So thank you so much for this award, and keep well, everyone. And who knows, it won't be long, we'll be seeing each other again. Okay? So take care.
And that brings us to the end of the British Fantasy Awards 2020 ceremony. Thank you to everyone involved, including those whose names you see on your screen right now, and congratulations to all of the winners. It really was another amazing year. Thank you, and good night. Or morning, or afternoon, whenever you're watching this. Have a good one.